Hey, what's up? So you're into astrology, and perhaps you are someone who is more well versed in astrology, or someone who's just getting into astrology, right? Well, this video is a little more of a challenge to those who may be already into astrology because we all do things a little different. This is more or less me making a point when it comes to your chart, maybe looking at someone else's chart, and how I look at things from my chart. So, in astrology, there are different forms of astrology. There's Vedic astrology, there's the whole sign astrology, more or less ancient astrology, medieval astrology, Hellenistic astrology. Then there's different applications to astrology, transits with astrology, and it just goes on, right? So, what is it that I do to be able to be so confident in what it is that I'm looking at when it comes to looking at someone's chart? With me, at least, I look at the consistencies of what I read in astrology. So, medieval Hellenistic astrology, if I recall, Hellenistic astrology only goes by whole sign aspects. What does that mean? Well, when a sign or an aspect is formed, I'll give an example. A sextile is formed between two planets. There is a consistency in what occurs that is creating this aspect. And what is that? Cat. And what is that? That is the gender, the polarity between the two planets and the signs in which they sit on. So, an example would be two genders. That would be, for instance, give me a second. I gotta think of it as I pet the cat. So, a good example would be ah, yes, it'd be Scorpio. It would be a Pluto in Scorpio and a Mars in Capricorn. Now, what created that aspect? The camera's moving because of the cat. What creates that aspect? Yes, what ends up creating that aspect is the consistency of the genders and the polarity. And now, each and every single time you have two planets sitting in those areas, a sextile will be formed. Now, depending on which astrological method we're attributing, is dependent on if that sextile will still be there. Some, and I believe this might be the medieval, that it is very dependent on the orbs. Same with modern astrology. Very dependent on the orbs and the degrees in which the planets sit on. Well, when you go to Hellenistic astrology, it doesn't make a difference because that is a consistency of a connection that would form in itself. So, what do I look for? Again, I look for consistency. What is something consistent that falls along all astrological methods and what most aligns? Well, to be truthful, most astrologers end up doing this, or they fall along some type of system that they just have a liking for when using like the housing system of Palladius. I think that's how you pronounce it, or Porphyry. There's another one. Then then there's the whole sign, which I prefer because it seems to make more sense and how the configuration of the consistency with these aspects actually form shapes. They form the square with squares. They perform hello. They turn into triangles with triplicities or trines. And then there's the hexagram, or the hexagon, excuse me. The hexagon with sextiles. So that's how I go about things when it comes to astrology. Is the consistency. Like modern day astrology will use minor aspects, and they would use these minor aspects and would be able to come up with an interpretation of the form. Well, with ancient astrology, Hellenistic astrology, those were just considered diversions. They wouldn't consider that an aspect at all. And so you could see now that depending on what it is and the method we're using, can very much depend on the interpretation you get. Now, which one is the correct interpretation? Well, I suppose as the more further back you go, the more correct you likely are. Knowing that, going back through time, and through these texts and how astrology has changed over the years with the ruling classes, and how each ruling class, things just became a derivative off a derivative off a derivative. So what is the right interpretation? Well, a lot of people end up going back to Vedic astrology. Now, if you ask me about Vedic astrology, I don't know. Anyways, hope this video was useful to you, and I'll see you guys in the next video.